The house had stood empty for so long that nature had begun to reclaim it. Vines and weeds weaving through the cracks in the stonework. Tendrils of ivy forming a dark green stain on the once white walls. It was a sad sight, a shell of its former self. A monument to forgotten grandeur. The townspeople called it Whispering Pines after the rustling of the wind through the long dead branches of the pine forest surrounding the house. The pines had been there as long as anyone could remember. Silent sentinels watching over the sleeping town. But more recently, the townspeople had begun to hear other sounds in the pines. Whispers that spoke of tragedy and despair. Voices that carried on the wind, chilling anyone who heard them to the bone. No one dared go near the house. Not even during the day. It was as if an unseen force kept watch over the manor, ensuring its secrets remained buried. But curiosity, like a stubborn weed, can grow in the most unlikely of places. And soon, the whispers of the abandoned house drew the attention of two young boys, Thomas and William. They were best friends. These two, in the summertime, their days were long and hot and sticky, filled with the drone of cicadas and the smell of freshly cut grass. There wasn't much to do in town, not if you were bored of fishing and swimming and playing endless games of tag. So when the older kids dared each other to spend the night in the Whispering Pines, they accepted without hesitation. It was just a dare, a foolish, reckless dare. But what did they have to lose? They were young, invincible even, and the stories surrounding the manor were just that, stories. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, they set off into the darkening woods. The trees closed around them, forming a wall of green that muffled the sounds of the world. Soon, the only sounds they could hear were their own footsteps and the beating of their hearts. When they finally reached the clearing, the house loomed before them, dark and menacing, a silhouette against the dying light. They didn't stay outside to admire the view, though. No! They ran then, their breath catching in their throats as they burst through the front door and into the house. Dust motes danced in the slivers of moonlight that pierced through the gloom. Cobwebs brushed against their faces as they moved through the rooms, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous spaces. It was then they began to hear the whispers, soft at first, then growing louder, swirling around them like a vortex of sound. They tried to make sense of the words, but they were too jumbled, too distorted. All they could make out was despair, fear, and something else. Something that sounded like a name, a woman's name. Then suddenly, just as abruptly as they started, the whispers stopped. The silence was deafening, broken only by their ragged breathing. They didn't wait to find out if the whispers would start again. They fled then, stumbling through the darkness, desperate to escape the oppressive gloom of the house. When they finally burst out into the night, the moon was high in the sky and the whispers were gone. But as the days passed and the wound of their adventure healed, the memory of what they had experienced in the Whispering Pines grew. They told no one, though. Who would have believed them? And besides, what was there to say that the old abandoned house was haunted by voices from beyond the grave? No, they kept their secret close, locked away in their hearts, along with the sound of their own voices as they whispered it to each other in the dead of night. Years passed and the boys grew older, but the memory of the Whispering Pines never faded. In fact, it grew stronger with time, taking root in their minds, turning into an obsession. They became consumed with the need to uncover the secrets of the house, to understand the whispers that echoed within its walls. And so, their journey began. A journey that would lead them back to the Whispering Pines and into the very heart of the mystery. For the whispers had not been a one-off occurrence. They were a calling, a beckoning from beyond the grave, a desperate attempt to be heard, to be understood, and the boys, whether they wanted to or not, were destined to listen